Wild Health is about optimizing you. We use genomics, blood work, biometrics, microbiome assessment, many other tests, and a conversation with you to come up with a full health optimization plan. What's the perfect diet, exercise, and supplement plan for you and only you? The Wild Health podcast is about optimizing all of us. Here we cover the cutting-edge science that gives you the base to be able to apply the personalized plan we give you as a patient. To sign up as a patient, go to wildhealth.com. Or if you're a physician or health coach and you want to learn how to do this for your patients, we're happy to help as well. Wildhealth.com for all the information on becoming a patient or working with us.
All right, what's up, you guys? It is Erin, one of the Wild Health doctors. Excited to be back here today with Ashleigh Di Lello. I think I pronounced your name right. Is that right?
Yeah, Di Lello.
Rad.
Yes.
Rad. So Ashley's awesome. I'm super excited to get to know her a little bit more. We've been chatting a little behind the scenes and can tell I'd actually just like to sit down and have a cup of coffee with you sometime. But Ashley and I have a lot of synergy, I think. So excited to dive into some of this commonality. But she's the founder and creator of Bio-Emotional Healing. This is a neuroscience-based process which is designed to rewire the nervous system out of stress. She's a former professional dancer, featured on Dancing with the Stars. If any of you might recognize her face or name, also So You Think You Can Dance, and been on lots of major outlets like Forbes, NBC, no big deal. Her personal recovery from 2 severe health battles led her to develop a method that is now helping clients around the world heal chronic pain, anxiety, and trauma. So I think we could all use more of that. I think it is the part of healthcare that is probably the least focused on and one of the most important. I'm a little biased with the fact that I see a lot of people where this has affected their health, and this affected my health personally as well. But I think it's one of those things that is almost more dismissive in medical conversations of like, oh, it's probably stress. It's kind of like in the conversation in the traditional practice, when in reality, your perceived stress or trauma or medical trauma or whatever it might be can have like massive influence in outcomes of your biology. And I don't think we're taught this enough in med school. I'm really passionate about this subject. I teach on this subject. So I'm so excited to dive into this with you and have you on the podcast to get some of this word out to people.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I'm so passionate as well, because it was the missing piece for me and what I've seen with so many of my clients, notwithstanding the relentless efforts to do everything right, especially today. Like, your life can revolve around what you eat and what you do and your health practices and biohacking and have everything. And then there's this sense of like, what is wrong? Why aren't I not getting well? And that impact on your nervous system is so profound in how it drives our stress responses. So it helped save my life. And so I'm so passionate about just people understanding they're not broken, and beyond repair, no matter how damaged they feel, or physically, mentally, emotionally, or how long they've been stuck. So I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, likewise. I love what you just said. I actually say that to my patients a lot sometimes when they've the average time to diagnosis, I think, is like 5 to 7 years of an autoimmune condition, if that even ends up happening and you get a formal diagnosis, right? Which, what does that always even mean?
Right.
But it is a long time typically when people are kind of left alone and to fend for themselves, figure out their symptoms. It can lead them into this understandably very vigilant state of monitoring their health, which unfortunately can kind of perpetuate some of this nervous system response that I think you're talking about here. And I oftentimes, in one of the first conversations with people, I'm like, hey, just try this on. What if nothing's broken?
Mm-hmm.
What if you're not, what if nothing's wrong with you? And you're not broken and your body is just giving you signals to try to find balance again. And it's usually a very disarming part of the conversation, right? So I love that you just said that. And I feel like it resonates with a lot of people. So whatever you're comfortable with sharing, we would love to know a little bit more about what brought you to this. I know there's some personal story here. So whatever you're comfortable with sharing, we would love to know.
Yeah, we'll start from the beginning and surmise, nearly 30 years into a little
Yeah, no big deal.
summary here. Yeah, I defied the odds twice. I thought one was definitely enough, but it really was that second journey that led me to studying the brain because it was my only way out. But my health journey started super young. I was only 13 years old. I was the epitome of health. In fact, my nickname was Energizer Bunny. I literally seemed to never run out of energy, and I felt so good. I loved life. I was dancing 5 hours a day, and literally overnight, all of that changed. I woke up one morning, I was, like I said, barely 13 years old, and I had pain in every joint and muscle. I could hardly move. I had a high fever, and it was literally like I went to bed in one body and woke up in an entirely different one. And the time frame is always gives us context. That was 29 years ago. So the world was very different. None of this existed, there was no podcast, internet, social media, YouTube. There was really no functional medicine that was mainstream,
Right.
at all, right? It was really still perceived through some type of voodoo lens, like the lady with dreadlocks burning incense, down the street. So for several years, I went to all the doctors' hospitals across the country. I was tested for just about everything that existed. They knew I had some rare viral infection, that they couldn't diagnose, though. My body was breaking down. My organs were shutting down. My skin was yellow from my liver shutting down. I lost most of my hair. I got down to about 90 pounds at 5'4". I got to so sick that, there were days I couldn't even speak or lift a finger. And I would pray honestly as I would go into these different tests that something would come out positive, and I
Yeah,
know a lot of people resonate with that. I think
totally.
it's the worst place to be in the mystery land. It's so hard to not just go through the physical symptoms, but that relentless pursuit to find answers, to even have a plan. Like, okay, what do we need to do to
Right.
address this? It's I just want to know, and then we'll
Like
face
a
it.
total lack of control.
Total lack of control.
Yeah.
And we know, I better understand now when it comes to the brain, which is a predicting machine, the amount of stress that uncertainty creates of not only am I going to get well, but what is this? Just amplifies the stress that you're going through.
Uh-huh.
So after about, I don't know, nearly 2.5, 3 years of this whole process, and essentially I was sent home to die. I was at one of the top pediatric infectious disease doctors in the country, and he came in and told me that I needed to accept I wasn't gonna live past my teenage years.
Oh, my heart just sank. I like before we got on this call, we talked about your daughter, and she's not that different of an age to where you
Mm.
were when this happened. And I like think of looking at my child and hearing someone say that is just overwhelming.
Oh, I can't even fathom it. In fact, when I became a mother, I remember just calling my mom, and it was, like, one of the first times I had to take my daughter to, um she was having something serious going on. I had to take her to the hospital, and I called my mom, and I said, "How in the world did you do that for 4 years?" Because I was fighting between life and death for 4 years, and as a parent, I can't even imagine, and the helplessness that, the
Right.
parents also feel, right?
Totally.
Watching and searching for answers, and this moment, I thank my mom so much when the doctor tells me this, that she didn't jump right in because I sure would. But my mom gave me this space to respond, which she must have been wise and knowing that like this also was my journey, and I remember in that moment trying to just come to terms,
The
like
moment when you were told that
told.
this was going to take your life ultimately.
Yes. Yes. And he told me the sooner you accept this, the easier it's going to be to come to terms with your reality. And I don't know, in that moment, it's like the whole world stopped and I felt every single emotion that exists, and just trying to even wrap my head around how can this be my life? I mean, I was the epitome of health, like, this cannot be real, and I didn't know. I didn't know what we were gonna do, how I was gonna overcome this, but I just knew something with absolute certainty. So I looked the doctor straight in the eyes and I just said, "I don't accept this." And then they sent in a psychologist to talk to me.
Obviously.
You know? And I remember looking at her and saying, "Listen, I understand why you're here, and I know I'm dying. I can feel it. Like, I am terrified, but I also feel deep down inside that if I just accept that I'm dying, that any chances of survival are gone." And so we left that hospital not knowing what we were gonna do, but just this determination that deep down inside, I believed there was a way that my body could overcome and fight this. And it was a long road, but essentially, we did everything possible to support my immune system to fight this, both from a physical standpoint, which back then, again, like, cut out all the sugar cereals that were a part of growing up, in my age frame, Fruit Loops and sugar smacks and all of those things that we
Or
now
if you're
more so.
healthy,
Yeah,
Wheaties or,
yeah, that's right. Right,
Raisin Bran.
that's right. Grape nuts. You
Yeah, grape
remember those?
nuts. There you go.
That had to soak because they were like rocks. But we essentially cut out anything processed, any sugar, just any food that either it really became this food either helps my immune system or it takes away from it. Um, I did supplements, homeopathic medicine. Again, everything that's very understood today, but 29 years ago was a very kind of different world.
Yeah, you guys were pretty cutting edge and honestly taboo, probably.
We were, and having grown up in a Western medical family, it was very like, "What are you doing?" But that's what desperation will take you, If there's
Totally.
no answers
Like, it
here.
wasn't work. That's where you started and it didn't work, right?
That's right.
So I want to keep hearing what got you better, but I just want to understand. We have a lot of medical people that listen to this podcast as well. My guess is the leading theory was not trying to like get control and certainty from it, but just like to understand what helped you. Like, I guess his leading theory was some sort of like, probably amidst other triggers would be my guess, but some sort of viral process that was not determined, commonly so, followed by like some sort of like immune reaction that persisted.
Yes.
That also was not like easy to put in a box. Is that
Right. Right. Yep. Yep,
okay?
exactly. That was pretty much the consensus across the board, but we don't know what. And
Which
so
can happen in kids. I mean, not to this degree typically, but
right.
like reactive arthritis and different things, and in children is honestly not that atypical. Like their immune responses are so robust because these things they're introduced to are novel for their systems,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And then if there's some sort of genetic predisposition for like a dysfunctional immune response mixed with, environmental inputs like toxins or different things, like a number of different
Sure.
things that can stack up, you can have a perfect storm. This is a very extreme
Right.
example,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah, and again, 29 years ago, just different climate of
Yeah, totally.
understanding. So really, I was told you're going to make medical history books because we don't know, but we can
Mm.
see, all these immune responses happening. So we have nothing really to do for you, and that's when we were like, there's got to be other answers out there. There's got to be other
Good for
ways.
you.
And I give so much credit to my mom, because my mom was, I mean, I felt that way, but I was a 13, 14, 15-year-old girl. I don't have, I have limited resources. And again, you couldn't go online and search anything or find anyone on social media. It was yellow pages. It was word of mouth. We did not have this data bank of knowledge. You couldn't order supplements and have it be there in 2 days. It was just a different world, but really it became what helps my immune system and do everything in that and take away anything that weakens it. And at the same time, I really started to see the intricate brain body connection. This was the first instance where it helped save my life. Like, it didn't create the sickness. I loved life. Like, people always ask me, were you really stressed? Was there something going on? I'm like, no, it was the greatest loss for me to lose something I loved, which was dance and being a teenager and all of that. But I got so sick. There was really nights I was afraid to go to sleep. I felt so close to my body shutting down that I would stay awake and I would will my body to keep living. I really could feel that if some nights if I surrendered that conscious will to live, it just felt like my body was just so exhausted from the fight. So I would stay awake and I would will my body to keep going. And every day, again, nobody told me this because there was no discussion of neuroscience back then or beliefs in this way. But I really made a choice. Every day I know I can put all my energy and efforts into not wanting to die, or I can put all my energy and efforts into living and healing. The result's the same, but that neurochemical response, right, that it creates in the body.
Is the result the same though?
Right. No, the
I
desired
mean,
outcome of being
honestly,
alive, right?
I
Yeah.
think what you're maybe saying, I think I heard a different thing. I'm guessing what you were saying is like, even if the outcome is the same, the energy along the way, like your experience is going to be better regardless of if it works or not, right?
Right.
But like, gosh, it can work when your mindset is different. Like that does matter for health outcomes also.
Absolutely. Right. And we see that. We know that with placebo effect alone.
Totally.
And it's so interesting because even when I've lectured at medical conferences, I'm like, you see the power of belief over and over and over again in placebo effect, but why do we discount it as having such a great significance when someone is navigating through something and their mental
Mhm.
state and their fortitude and their belief that their body can heal versus the fear that it can't? It has such a profound impact on the state that they're living in each day and whether your body really does become a bigger threat response to your brain. And a lot of that is determined by what we speak and how we see the whole circumstance and how we navigate it. Right? There's no discounting how powerful it is. And someone's will to live can very much either allow them to heal or when you lose the will to live, right? We've seen people's bodies also give up. I mean, even soldiers in war can go, there's so many records of going in a corner and just really giving up that will to live and they've died. And even though there's physical reasons as to why that could happen, there's so many circumstances where there was no reason, but lost that will to live. And so I know without a doubt everything that I did to treat my physical body helped my body fight this virus. And I know that that will and the messaging and focusing on healing helped save my life for sure
Mhm.
that first time. But I did not understand the impact it had on my nervous system.
All of the health
All of
trauma
that.
that you went through.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 4 years of living between life and death is really teaching my nervous system to operate in survival, because it was.
Totally.
It was. Every day was survival, and I was determined, and I didn't really also process the hard part of all of that because I was just so determined to get to the other side. And then when I did survive, I was like, "Let's go back. Let's live life." I got this second chance at life, but I didn't really understand that after 4 years of that, really subconsciously, my nervous system was like, "Listen, safety is staying in this fight or flight response." And I I saw signs of it without understanding. I did have parts of my illness that took 13 years to heal. I just wasn't dying anymore. Even when I was healthy and strong in my professional dance career, I was getting injured all the time, notwithstanding all my efforts to take care of my body. I had a very hard time relaxing, even though I was a type A personality and go and go and go. I could feel this kind of internal buzzing that wouldn't calm, and I couldn't really make sense of it other than, I'm a driven person. I want to seize the day. I want to love life. But even I remember, stretching. If you look at dancers and they're stretching and they look so calm, I could feel something in my system never really quite able to just let go. I even struggled to take like deep breaths because that requires letting go. And part of my system was like, that's not safe, right? Because also the brain is a predicting machine, couldn't predict that I was healthy and then I was dying, and that alteration was really significant in a way that I didn't know, I didn't understand. until I went through my second health experience. And desperation once again drew me to studying something different, which was the brain and the nervous system. And that's when I realized what I had gone through previously was really impacting what I was going through this second time. Even though there was a physical catalyst that started it all, the way in which my body was responding and the pain responses that it was sending was very much driven from the memory of what I had gone through prior. And it just kind of went into survival mode on overdrive. Hmm. So I had a great career, top of my career. Like you said, we talked about I was on TV. I did Broadway 8 shows a week. Like it was like I climbed my mountain, I was like, look I made it. This is so incredible. I have the help to do this. And then I had a hip surgery, which was necessary because I did also abuse my body through my professional career. I had my second hip surgery, and the first one, I got back to dance after 8 months. And the second one failed, and my whole body was launched into chronic pain, and it felt like deja vu. But if I'm being totally honest, this one was much harder than dying. Even though I was grateful, when you live in unrelenting nerve pain 24 hours a day and you struggle to do just about anything. And I had a 2-year-old daughter that I couldn't hold and play with and lost the ability to walk. And it was just a type of hell I wouldn't wish upon anyone. And I thought, okay, I've been here before. I know what to do. I had all the nutrition on board, all the supplements. I did regenerative medicine. I had like over 200 injections, stem cell, PRP, prolotherapy. I had all the biohacking. I
You were
mean,
going to course your way through that
that's right.
healing. Yeah.
Yes. I'm good at fighting. I'm very good at fighting. And none of that worked, it did
Yeah.
not work. And I did have a physical thing. They left a hole in my hip capsule that was not visible in an MRI. That obviously threw off the whole structural integrity of my body. But again, the alarm bells that went off were so high because of that memory of the past. So after over 2 years of trying everything possible to heal and now having pain in about 12 areas of my body, being diagnosed with fibromyalgia, chronic regional pain syndrome, interstitial cystitis. I had gut issues. I had thyroid issues because I was sleeping 2 to 3 hours a night in horrible pain. So it was just this cascade of of more and more things breaking down, which reaffirmed the whole fight or flight response. And I was in survival again. I could hardly hold a book. I I was barely surviving each day. And I really got desperate. At one day, I looked at my husband and I said, "There's nothing left to try. Like we've literally explored everything." And we were about to lose our home because we'd invested so much money into trying to get me well. And I remember that night, it was like 2 in the morning. I was on my bedroom floor just rocking in pain. And I just thought, "Well, I can't do this anymore for myself, my family. What are we gonna do?" And, that night, I've never felt so desperate in my life, like, so exhausted, and it scared me because I'm such a fighter, and I really was just being depleted to the depths of my soul, and I thought, "Well, what would this look like if I just stopped looking for answers?" And, as I really sat in that truth for me and my family, I wasn't okay with it. And so I was thinking about everything I'd been told. And really, one thing a lot of doctors had told me is, well, your nervous system flipped a switch into pain. And I thought, well, then I'm going to figure out how to flip it back. And that very next day, I dove into neuroscience and pain science and was thankfully in this age of information, learning from some of the best pain scientists in Australia to understanding the nervous system and how it gets altered. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, I've been in all this pain and all pain comes from the brain and no one has even talked to me about this and the hypervigilance and those pain receptors getting altered." And then that's when I realized, "Oh my gosh, the impact of my previous experience, it's all interconnected here. And how do I start to unlearn these pain pathways and get my body out of this hypervigilance even while living in this and really rewire my nervous system back to health?" And it became my mission because my life kind of depended on it. And I became my own guinea pig of just merging everything I was reading with both lived experiences and knowing as I was creating my process by emotional healing that that wasn't just for my life, but that's what I was going to do to help others really be able to address this missing piece. And it got me well. And I've been coaching clients through it for 7 years now.
That's incredible. So this was 9 years ago now that you had this moment of
Yeah,
like kind of your rock bottom, maybe would be a
for
way to
sure.
describe it.
Absolutely.
Um, and maybe a little bit of surrender in there of trying to not, hack and control the process.
Right.
But that acceptance of the nervous system could really be playing a role and understanding that part of it. Um, I have so many questions, but I just want to like take a minute and take in that whole story. Like, I really appreciate your vulnerability and just sharing what you've been through. I can't even tell you how many people I'm sure are going to resonate with some piece of this. Not everybody has a life-threatening medical experience at a young age, but there are a lot of people that are their nervous systems are set in survival mode because of some early experience that was really appropriate for in a lot of different iterations, a lot of different forms of. I mean, the ACEs study is a perfect example of this, where, different type of adverse events are very, very in early age, are very, very clearly associated with increased risk of all sorts of diseases and outcomes, autoimmune disease being one of them, or immune dysfunction, as we're talking about today, um, and chronic pain.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing all this. I think it's going to be really, really helpful for a lot of people to see someone on the other side of some of this, right? Because a lot of times in these sorts of scenarios, if not most times in these sorts of conditions, the system as it stands doesn't have the right kinds of answers. When it comes to immune dysfunction, more often than not, in the current system, the answer is just blanket suppression,
Sure.
which is difficult. Sometimes it's necessary acutely to
Mhm.
prevent severe damage, but gosh, that is a hard, full answer. I had a similar moment after my autoimmune disease where I was told by a doctor, I was like, what's the trajectory of lupus going to look like? And on these kind of meds, and they're like, well, it's going to slowly get worse over time, and this is inevitable, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, like, no,
Yeah.
like that doesn't make sense to me. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you and I were raised in similar, you know, childhood backgrounds where we were able to have that level of curiosity and fight us.
Mm.
I don't know. It's interesting to me. I think this is one of my like biggest questions about humans. Like, where does resilience like that come from? And that ability to question what you're given and see a different outcome. So it's really, really cool to hear your experience. And I think it's going to positively impact a lot of people. We dive into so much granular science at Wild Health, which
Right.
is super badass and I love it.
I
But
love that too.
um, gosh, there's so much that our mindset and our outlook and our beliefs about our body, about the world, um, means for our health and what that does to our nervous system and what that relationship does to then our hormones and our immune
Mhm.
system and our cytokines. And I mean, there's science behind all of this
Yeah.
too, but in layman's talk, like, gosh, the way we see the world and ourselves really, really impacts how we feel and what our health looks like. And I don't think we talk about that quite enough. So I really appreciate you bringing some human piece to our podcast.
Well, I don't know if there's anything. Well, it's one of the most powerless, helpless feelings to struggle with your health because it's the greatest gift. It's what allows your whole life to be possible and how you show up in your life and how you work and how you socialize and as a parent, as a spouse, as a partner. And so then you also have those deep, significant emotional impacts of not just maybe what contributed to you getting sick, but also the impact of that sickness, of going through all of that, all the ways in which it changes and alters your life, the feelings of brokenness, shame, guilt, if you're spending all your money, how it's changed the dynamic of your home, right? Also, you have just the neuroscience part of the brain gets better at whatever it practices, right?
True.
We talk about neuroplasticity a lot in its ability to change, but also really understanding that the more the brain and nervous system activate certain pathways, the better they get at doing it again. So the longer you've been sick, the longer you've been in pain, the better that communication between your brain and your body have become. And to your point also, the better the brain gets at being this overly protective, hypersensitive monitor of every symptom and sensation in the body. And we're kind of trained to, because when you get sick, you're like, hey, when did it get worse? When did it get better? Pay attention. And then inadvertently, we're also training our brain to just hyper focus on everything that we feel, which then we know whatever we focus on and then have an emotional response to, the brain's threat response goes up, sends more stress hormones. That amplifies the symptom not only in that moment, but reinforces and perpetuates that pattern moving forward. And so the longer anyone has been sick, it's not discounting what's going on physically, but there is a direct brain impact and emotional impact that are in a constant interplay that are now part of that stress cycle. Because no matter how tough or resilient or a fighter you are, and I really had to like lower my ego to accept this, because I was like, what? I already overcame this. Like, I was a fighter, I did that thing. And now I've got to deal with also this impact on my nervous system that isn't a weakness, it's a reality of having lived this experience, not only on me as a human, but literally in how my brain communicates to my body. And I have to teach it to let go of this hypervigilance and hyper monitoring and overprotection, even though my whole history validates the need to stay there. Right. So it's a process to really start to work through these layers, not only emotionally in what you've gone through, whether just through the illness or there's other contributing factors from your childhood or other times in your life,
Yeah.
but also the impact of what your health experience has done for you, especially for those who've gone through it for a long time.
Totally. I mean, I think it becomes part of people's identity, especially when it starts so young. Um, and honestly, really intelligently so, right? Like most people who are in survival mode at a young age, like, damn, that's really smart. Like you
Mhm.
probably had to be, right?
Yeah.
Like you probably wouldn't be here today if you weren't that degree of a fighter, right?
Mhm.
Which is awesome. But when those things are turned on for a long time, and similar things can be said for different emotional adaptations and different things, like most adults, common patterns and core patterns of reactivity where our, inner little ones tend to act up at various ages. Um, Come from a really, really intelligent place that really worked for that
Right.
person at that period of their life
Yeah.
and really helped them in some way. And so it's tough to reteach those like integral parts of yourselves that are really reactive by nature, right? I
Mhm.
mean, they're really
Yeah.
deeply ingrained, especially if things started happening at a very early age in life when the body and nervous system are still forming. So super interesting. So we're getting into kind of the what that you've
Mhm.
got to and the understanding of it, the how this plays out and what you do about it, because I've always been so curious about this paradox. I know what worked for me. I know what works for some of my patients. I read about this stuff and research this stuff all the time, but I'm just really curious about how you look at it. I think this is pretty much what you do for a living now.
It is. Yeah.
So I'm curious how you would explain the how, because there's this paradox, right? Like you're talking about kind of doing less and surrendering and not having so much control and vigilance. But how do you actually do that
Mhm.
without doing more, right? Like help me understand. And not like give away all your
Of
trade
course.
secrets. I don't mean that, but give
Mhm.
me some insights here.
Yes. The first thing that's absolute necessary is just that paradigm shift of like you said, to your patients? What if you're not broken? There's a paradigm shift of understanding everything I feel isn't just a manifestation of something damaged in the body. Okay, so if I can embrace that, that gives me now this opening of, oh, there's something I can do about it in addition to treating the body. So that's the first step. The second is really starting to become really aware. And I know this seems like you do have to do more to a degree, but it's with a different intention.
Like the energy behind it is really
Energy
different.
behind it. So we're very aware of our symptoms, very aware, right? Our brain is looking at that, monitoring it, reacting to it all day long. The first part is so important to say, okay, we know how that makes us feel, but we need to start paying attention to what that response internally is. Because with that emotion, whether it's fear, overwhelm, powerlessness, there's a lot of thoughts. What if this never goes away? What if it goes to here? There's a lot of fear-based rumination that has become so habitual that it just runs in it almost in a nanosecond glued together with the symptomology, right? So a lot of people aren't per se aware because it is so habitual and it's warranted. But like I mentioned, that emotional response amplifies the brain's threat to that symptom, heightens it, and then re-solidifies that whole process. So what I tell all of my clients, we feel like I'm going to do better if that symptom gets better. And really the first step is learning how to respond better to the symptom to lower the brain's threat response first. And I have found that one of what you said and what I was talking about is that so much of these stress responses are protective based on survival patterns, right? So there's always wisdom. And again, not discounting there's physical stuff going on, but exhaustion can be the brain trying to get you to slow down, right? Pain to be still, anxieties like to get your alert. Sometimes digestive issue is all rooted in those survival functions. Like there's wisdom and communication that is also happening behind these
Yeah, it's
symptoms,
information.
right? It's information. So if we first can have that paradigm shift of my brain and body are trying to communicate to me, not punish me, then that gives us some space to not just have our symptom and our reaction glued together, but start to intentionally become more curious and aware of our internal state before maybe the flare or in connection with. That's the first. Then clients really starting to understand that how they respond and how they redirect that fear or that communication to their body from fighting to more, okay, we're a team. What are you trying to communicate with me? Starts to decrease the severity of their symptoms, or they can
Mm.
calm them down faster, or they
When you
don't
say we're
last
a
as
team,
long.
you're talking about like thinking of your body that way.
Yes, because most people, and it makes sense when you've been sick or in pain for a long time, you feel like your enemy's your body, like it's against you,
Totally. Like
it's
it's
punishing
betrayed
you.
you. Yeah.
100%. You're like, why does my body hate me? People say that all the time. Why can't it heal? But again, threat response, stress hormones inhibits healing. That's where I said that paradigm shift is really crucial to anything else that comes after. You have to fully understand and accept that your body's always fighting for you. But how else can it get your attention, whether something physically is going on or an emotional, than by a symptom? There's no other way for it to communicate to us in a way that we'll actually pay attention to, right? So when we start to first have that shift and communicate differently, that opens up the way for something actually to change, right? We even know what a lot of patients go through is a sense of shame, guilt. What's wrong with me? Why can't I heal? I'm so broken. And we know from neuroimaging that sense of really harsh judgment, self criticism, shame, guilting, it is also a further sign that puts our stress signals. It puts us in fight or flight. It locks up the neural synapses where information is exchanged, where we can actually interpret and use new information. So all the way in which we interact with ourselves and our body is crucial for anything actually to change, but it's a part we don't really talk about. So the first half of bioemotional healing is not only the understanding and the knowledge and the paradigm shift and becoming a partner with your body, even if you've hated or felt like its enemy, but also, I have protocols that to process out the impact, not only of what you've gone through, but past. And yes, I so many times I have people who grew up in a home, right, where hypervigilance was necessary because of tempers or abuse. And so again, that's all their nervous system has known,
Mm-hmm.
or they went through something and it just altered them in a way they didn't realize, right? Or it could just be I've been sick for 8 years and now my nervous system has been altered. And so there's
Totally.
a lot to process out that has stayed within the system because we know whatever emotionally impacts us, the brain really takes a snapshot of that and it embosses it neurologically and holds on to it. And then it becomes part of that stress response driving the fight or flight mechanisms in the body. So we have to also process that out.
That makes so much sense. I'm really curious what your take is on how I feel like a lot of people, it's really hard to come to some of these realizations because not only does it affect how you view yourself, which is one of the hardest things to change. We don't want to let ourselves down of the identity we have of ourselves,
Mhm.
right? But most people, this is not something that happens overnight. And this is something that you've built a whole life around this version of yourself. And it usually supports this version of yourself. So it's this whole house of cards that might have to come down. Like you might have the empath that like caregivers or see a lot of people in the healthcare industry. And they're giving everything to everybody. And like, what happens to all those people in that career when that
Mhm.
happens? Or you might have, you've talked a lot about the desire for control, you
Mhm.
know, high achievers, like you're rewarded in a lot of ways for these types of things, like these signals that the body can feel disease from when done to an extreme in the cultural like section of our world. It's these things tend to be highly rewarded like attributes.
Mhm.
And so people tend to have a whole life built around these things. And so what happens there with people when, come to this realization? It's like, oh, do I quit my job? Do I like, have other people care for the kids? Like what actually happens on a day to day? Like how is that like how do people meet you there typically?
Yeah, and you're right. It's a real identity kind of crisis and shift, and the brain also points to all your successes and your love and your acceptance and your worth, right? That are also all woven into this. So every one thing I always tell my clients, everything to the brain comes down to meaning. So it's not an either or, it's an and. There are parts of these attributes that absolutely have served you and they're beautiful parts of you. And like most strengths, there's a weakness to it.
Yeah.
And these are the parts that we need to help the brain separate, that we can still keep parts and we can let go of others. And we really have to start to detach that because the brain does lump it all together. Again, my brain wanted to stay in those survival because it's how I survived my first. It's how I was a high achiever, academic scholarship in school. It's how I had my dance career, right? It was like, this is who we are. This is how we do great things, and this is how we survive. And it was like, yes, we can still be driven and do it differently. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing. It doesn't have to be done with the rigidity of either I'm succeeding or I'm failing. It's not all black and white. There is this infusion of compassion and grace that didn't exist. And so for a lot of clients, it's individual depending on what those survival mechanisms are and how they took root based on their experiences. But almost always it's working with the brain to understand we don't have to let all of it go, just certain aspects and what they were attached to, which is also part of the process of getting the brain to really come to a place of that was then and this is now. And yes,
Hmm.
this shaped me, but this is where I am now because we know the limbic system where all of the fear and uncertainty lies and these emotional memories doesn't have a time clock. So that's a big part, right, of why this becomes our default mode network in the brain because the significant things that have altered us, the brain is constantly playing as importance of today. And so working through those pieces and giving the brain assurances that parts of those survival mechanisms, they're still here. We just don't need to live there 24 hours a day. And so
Yeah.
the first half of the process is really partnering with the brain and body to move through the alterations, to become a partnership, to get the brain to accept that it can let these go. It's safe to let some of these go. And then the other half of the process is then really creating, rewiring, teaching the brain a new and better way of communicating and living and operating that serves us now. So yes, it there is doing less, but doing more, but in an intentional, trusting way. Like instead of fighting from fear and control, we're fighting from a place of trust and belief in our efforts that they're going to all work together to help us get well versus forcing it, which most of us, that's where we go to because we don't know what else to do.
Yeah. It sounds like really like over time garnering a sense of like trust in your body and even maybe gratitude for your body and the signals it's giving you. So I think that's been researched, right? I don't know the exact stat, so I probably shouldn't have opened my mouth about it off the top of my head, but um, like gratitude for diagnosis has been shown as one of the like uh, commonalities in people that undergo radical remission, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
well, those fear and defense networks in the brain get altered, right? When we go through diagnosis or anything hard. And gratitude is actually one of the most powerful practices to lower those fear and defense networks,
uh-huh.
right? And amplify our pro-social networks, which is health and vitality and joy. And and so there's a certain acceptance, right? Because whatever we resist persists. And I remember having to come to that truth of what you just said. This is how I'd explain it. When I just kept being told I'm a chronic pain patient, I'm a chronic pain patient. And I was like, I am not. I refuse to accept that identity. But it put me at so much war with what was my present reality until I really had this shift of, okay, I am in chronic pain because I am every moment of every day. I am in pain. And I don't like to use the word chronic because that means like forever. So I am in pain, but accepting this moment and the reality that I'm moving through is different than accepting it always will be
Hmm.
here. And so there's that acceptance, but also that detachment from this is forever. This is who I am now. This defines the rest of my life that I have to live through this lens. And that's a really important part of, yes, also lowering our resistance to the moment, to the symptoms that again reinforce the fight or flight. So there's so many layers to it
Truly.
that
Yeah, this is super powerful stuff. You and I should keep chatting about this and stay in touch offline, honestly, because we do so much. I see most of our autoimmune patients at Wild Health and a lot of our chronic illness patients, and we do so much for the physical aspect of things, and even the like interplay with what action steps we can take to support the nervous system directly as well, and down regulating that sympathetic overdrive, which is a lot of what you're talking about
Mhm.
today, and not so many scientific words. Whether that's everything from like the foundation of your immune system, like methylation and micronutrient
Nice.
deficiencies, and glycemic issues and inflammation and blah blah blah, gut health. Like we check it all, and we look at nervous system inputs and maybe a stellate ganglion block or neuromodulators or acupressure, vagal nerve stimulation. Like there's all these action steps you can take, but I don't think any of it can be done without the mindset piece.
Yeah.
And that shift is super complex and nuanced and individualized for different
Yes.
people's experiences. I think some people, if they're in like really trusting environments and group environments or certain therapy environments or just come to Jesus moments like what you talked about, like I think there can be moments. I had some of those in my experience, and I think I had the backdrop where I had family support and community support and like trust in myself to see those things a different way. But gosh, not everybody has that. And I think what you're doing is super cool and like really underdone, honestly. Like there's not a lot of that out there. So I would love to stay in touch because I can think of a number of people that would benefit from your services.
Yeah, I would love to. When we can get the body on board and treating all of the aspects that, yes, are also impacting the nervous system.
Yeah, it's a both
And
and, like you said, right?
yes, and then like I also realized once those internal alarm bells have been turned on, very often nothing from the outside in will silence it. It really has to come from the inside out. And that's that process of working through all the aspects. And it is nuanced. And we all have the same mechanisms in our brain and nervous system, no matter how different we are. And so we all do have that capacity. I've seen it. Even I've had an 84-year-old client whose neural pathway,
Oh, how badass.
she literally was and is. She was
That is so
a
cool.
hero. She was like, I know I don't have a lot of years left, but I am going to live better and differently. And it was just amazing to watch. And yes, she went through a lot of mourning because she did heal and she was like, "Man, I could have lived my life so
Oh,
differently." But she still is my hero because she really wanted to make the most of whatever she had left. And I just bring her up to say, no matter how long we've struggled, been stuck, the brain can change until the day we die, and its communication to the body can change, and when we can address not just the body like you, but the brain and the person,
mhm. The actual
then
human.
actual human, right, who's lived a life, then we really can heal. In fact, my favorite quote is from Hippocrates, who said, "It's more important to know what sort of person has the disease than what kind of disease the person has," because that person and who they are and how they think and how their life has molded
I
them,
haven't heard that. That's awesome.
yes, is so integrated to how that disease is not only manifesting or that pain, but how they're able to heal through it. So when we can partner brain, body, and person all together, then we really align the brain and body to do what they are designed to do, which is to heal.
That's awesome. What else would you like our audience to know, Ashleigh? This has been a wealth of information, and I feel like I've learned a lot and gotten to know you, which has been really special. But I just want to give you a chance to share any high points, anything about what you have to offer. Really, what would you want to leave people with?
Yeah, just the most basic premise is, like I said, the brain gets better at whatever it practices, but whatever the brain has learned, it can also unlearn. And whatever has been broken can also be rebuilt and healed. We have such beautiful divine intelligence within us. And from someone who literally has been just in the depths of knowing what it's like to die and knowing the worst type of hell that the body can create, and now have such beautiful health that not only I got to, but I've sustained, even while being around clients all day, every day, who could essentially trigger my nervous system back into fear. And that is equally as significant as the physical healing, is that I have total trust in my body. That buzzing I talked about in my system is gone. I fundamentally know my nervous system is different. And that's why I didn't just get well. It's my greatest asset to staying well. Even though I'm treat my body every day, I do all the things and I love doing that. I know that this relationship with myself and where my nervous system is my greatest biohack that I have.
Yeah, because when the
Every
next
day.
hit comes, like your system, you know your system now, right?
Yeah. And I would just say people, if they're interested in more, I have a more in-depth training on my website on these things, but further. And I will say my goal is always to make it in the most easily understood language, right? So that we take what's complex and allow it to make sense to each of us. I have a training there. I have a free brain body blueprint that really is a 3-step action plan to start to lower these alarm bells, your fight or flight response, and better allow you to kind of take control of that internal
Mm-hmm.
dialogue and actions. Um, and then people who are, interested more in diving into the work for themselves, they can schedule a free consult from my website. And we have that before we commit to going through this 12-week process together.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I think there's going to be a lot of people that this resonates with. And it's really cool. Like you said, the brain needs to believe it can happen. So I think seeing examples of when things have had this kind of an outcome, I think is really, really powerful. And I also just want to say on like a little bit more of a personal note, you spoke a little bit about your gratitude towards your mom and the strength she showed. And I imagine it was really difficult going through this when your little one was the age she was. But gosh, what a cool example you've set for her to show her that you can trust your body, that you can heal, that you have power over your outcomes, that you can see the world in a beautiful way after being through pain. I mean, at her developing years, you showed her some pretty incredible things. So just from one mom to another.
Thank you. Yeah, that definitely was one of the hardest aspects. You know, I was told I'd never have kids from what all I went through. And then and I lost my periods, and then I had this miraculous little child. And she was 2 when all this happened. And it was so hard, and not being able to be that mom in the way I wanted to. You know, I loved her and held her, but at the same time, yes, I'm so grateful that she learned life can be really, really hard, and we are resilient, and we can grow through it. And I've taught her through all of it. My main goal was for her to see how amazing the body is, not how scary it is, but see how amazing it can be and what it can overcome. So thank you. It means a lot.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming on, Ashleigh.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Wild Health Podcast. If you want more daily health education, be sure to follow us on Instagram, which is filled with health optimization how-tos, grocery shopping lists, guided breathwork posts, myth debunking, and so much more. You can find us at Wild Health MD on Instagram.